I'll put it on you, Puss.
Lamont Roach Jr. just fought to a 12-round draw against Isaac Pitbull Cruz. This was a majority draw as one judge gave the fight 115 to 111 to Pitbull Cruz, which translates to 8 rounds to 4 in his favour with the point off from each fighter. And the other 2 judges of course had it 6 rounds apiece, 113 to 113. This draw with Pitbull Cruz is Lamont Roach's 2nd consecutive draw and 3rd career draw in his pro career. Going into this fight with Pitbull, Roach was coming off of that draw with Tank Davis back in March that made him famous. Many fans felt as if Roach was robbed there in that fight against the big superstar Tank Davis. And way back in 2018, Lamont Roach fought to a 10-round split draw with the Puerto Rican former world title challenger Orlando Cruz in Puerto Rico, and many fans believe that Roach was robbed against Orlando Cruz. You know, people reckon that Roach was on the unfortunate end of a hometown decision there. So Roach has had 3 career draws, 2 consecutive draws, and 2 draws against guys called Cruz. Now, I don't think many people will deny that Roach got robbed against Tank. He was robbed in the way that the rounds were scored anyway, but he was undeniably robbed of a knockdown, and if that knockdown was counted, that would have got Roach the win with the way the official cards were. And Tank should have been deducted a point or 2 as well in that whole knockdown sequence in the 9th round, and that would have made it a clear win for Roach even on the official cards that were very generous to Tank. One of the 3 judges actually scored that fight as a win for Tank, so that was a majority draw just like in the Pitbull fight. And now, in the Pitbull fight, was Lamont Roach really robbed just like he was in the Tank fight? Or did he not do enough over the rounds to gain a clear victory, but he gets the actual hard done by now because most people acknowledge that he was actually robbed in his last fight before this? It's all poor Lamont Roach now. Was this actually a fight that could have gone either way, but the PBC commentary team, mainly the play-by-play commentator Mauro Ronaldo, were spinning a false narrative about Roach comfortably being ahead in the fight, without acknowledging Pitbull's early lead, which kept the fight close overall round for round as the fight went on. You know, if you have a good first 4 or 5 rounds and start to drop off, it doesn't mean that, you retroactively lose those few rounds that you did gain, no matter how you look as the fight goes on. And did the commentary team favour Roach's style of boxing more? Were they leaning into the narratives about Cruz being one-dimensional and not acknowledging that Cruz was catching Roach with a lot of left hooks as Roach was coming in close throughout the fight? And were they just glazing Lamont Roach in order to sell a potential rematch between Roach and Tank, which is easily the biggest fight that the PBC could make right now? It would have been bigger if Roach actually got the win over Pitbull, of course. Or did Roach actually outbox Pitbull and convincingly outland him enough to earn the win, playing the role of the daring matador, taming the bull but getting stuck in here and there to tee off on Pitbull to clearly outpoint him in at least 7 of the rounds? Now, watching live, I personally scored the bout 114 to 112 to Lamont Roach, but I'm not going to say that he was robbed here. I'm not going to lie, the way I saw it at the time, Roach did have a spell of dominance around the second half of the fight in which Cruz dropped off a bit, and that part of the fight wasn't the best to watch. I think it was like rounds 8 to 11 where Pitbull kinda looked like shit, wasn't as active as he was early on, but round for round, the fight was competitive overall and it was an intriguing watch, especially in the early stages. I don't think anyone will deny that the first few rounds were fun to watch. I mean, Pitbull dropped Roach hard in that 3rd round. I don't think Roach was actually rocked or out of it there. Roach wasn't really hurt at any point in the fight in my opinion, but that was a heavy left hook that Pitbull dropped Roach with there. Pitbull is a heavy puncher, and he definitely bothered Roach and caught him off guard with how much he brought the heat early. I actually had Pitbull 4 points up after 3 rounds, and that is how all 3 official judges had it at that point. Now, in terms of the ref apparently being biased against Pitbull in that fight, look, I can kinda see a case for that, and the immediate point deduction for that borderline shot in round 7 was a bit harsh, but this was a rough and tumble affair, and Pitbull was making it nasty in there at times, using his head and stuff, so it is what it is. Now, although I don't think that Roach was robbed on the cards, I'll be real, I do think that the 115 to 111 card in favour of Pitbull was quite questionable. I actually heard a bunch of people saying that they thought that Roach won the 2nd round. If I gave that 2nd round to Roach, I would have had it 115 to 111 to Roach. But as for the rounds that not all 3 of the official judges could agree on, that's round 4, one judge gave it to Pitbull and the other 2 gave it to Roach. Round 5, 1 to Pitbull, 2 to Roach as well. Round 8, 1 to Pitbull, 2 to Roach again. Round 9, 2 to Pitbull and 1 to Roach. Round 10, 1 to Pitbull and 2 to Roach. And round 11, 2 to Pitbull and 1 to Roach. So the cards are all over the place, aren't they? Now on my card, I only need to give Pitbull one of the rounds that I gave to Roach to score the fight to draw. And the one round I remember thinking twice about scoring at the time was the 4th round, which I gave to Lamont Roach live. But watching it back now, I saw that Pitbull did outland Roach in the 4th round. Pitbull got some good left hooks to the body in. Lamont Roach landed the cleaner shots when he was landing those counters, but Pitbull definitely landed more shots in the round. So with that being said, yeah, a draw is totally fine by me. You know, maybe Roach just doesn't do enough to get a clear win at the top level, and that's why he's had these 2 draws in a row now. He can't do enough to win these fights convincingly maybe. That's something to think about. In the draw of Tank, Roach missed out on becoming the WBA lightweight champion of the world, which would have made him a 2-weight world champion, and in challenging Pitbull, Roach missed out on becoming the WBC interim super lightweight champion, as a result of the final verdicts being a draw. It is an interim title, but remember, the full WBC super lightweight champ Subriel Matias just got pulled out of his title defense against Dalton Smith for failing a PED test, so that WBC interim belt could have got Roach a vacant WBC title fight with Dalton Smith, or even the potential to just be upgraded to full champion. But that interim belt is still with Pitbull, so those world title opportunities will be his now. Oh, by the way, at the point of his fight with Pitbull starting, Roach was finally stripped of his WBA Super Featherweight world title, and the interim WBA Super Featherweight champion Jazza Dickens got upgraded to full champ. Dickens, who won that interim title with a big upset win over Albert Batagaziev in July. Dickens will defend his title against Hayato Tatsumi in 3 weeks' time. In the co-main event now, O'Shaquie Foster absolutely schooled Stephen Fulton, didn't he? He made Fulton look hopeless in there. Foster kept Fulton behind the jab, he was stingy in there, first and last to the punch, caught Fulton with a clean punch whenever Fulton desperately tried to enter range and get something going, and he was beating Fulton up quite a bit later down the stretch. It was a cagey first couple of rounds to the fight, and whenever Fulton would try to get something going early in the fight, he just looked desperate, leading with overhand rights that Foster was catching on his shoulder with ease. Foster was just taking a look at him in the first couple of rounds, and yeah, he did just box Fulton's ears off for the whole fight after that. It's bizarre that Stephen Fulton was at super bantamweight not too long ago, and now he just missed weight at super featherweight, and he's been talking about a move up to lightweight. But Fulton is currently still the WBC featherweight champ, and Fulton better sort his weight out and get back down to 126. He doesn't have the stature for 130 as we just saw in the ring. His arms just look short, and he looked too sort of compact to get off of anything with his style and that much of a size disadvantage. Credit to Foster for his great performance, but Fulton just looked like he didn't have the frame to be able to box with Foster in there. Fulton is not too big for 126. He ain't even too big for 122. So he should probably forget about 130, let alone 135. He's clearly just stuffing his face in and lacking discipline outside of camp. And by the look of his face on fight week, and given that he missed weight, he definitely had a bad weight cut and struggled in his debut at 130. But again, that don't mean that he's too big for the weight. He just needs to live the life of a boxer and stop eating so much out of camp. Anyway, great performance from O'Shaquie Foster, who became the WBC interim lightweight champion with that win, which is kind of wild. O'Shaquie Foster is the WBC Super Featherweight World Champion, and Fulton was meant to be challenging for Foster's WBC Super Featherweight title, but they just made this an interim lightweight title fight when Fulton missed weight and came in above the Super Featherweight limit. Well, I guess Foster always wanted to move to lightweight eventually, and now he's got an interim lightweight belt, which is cool I guess, but it's weird that he's got an interim lightweight world title in a fight that was contracted to be at super featherweight, a defense of his super featherweight title. But I think the PBC and the WBC have some sort of cushy relationship, and because of that relationship, the PBC can just seemingly make any fight be an interim WBC world title fight. In this case, the PBC would have got that interim lightweight belt to be on the line for their guy Stephen Fulton, who missed the weight, but with the win over Fulton, Foster is now the interim champ at 135. And now, if the current full WBC lightweight champion Shakur Stevenson stays up at 140 after beating Teofimo Lopez and vacates his lightweight title, O'Shaquie Foster would be upgraded to the full WBC lightweight champion, by way of the interim title that he won in a fight against a featherweight champion, in a fight originally contracted as a super featherweight title fight. Insane. The Erislandy Lara fight before that absolutely stank. It's a shame that we had to get this instead of the unification with Janabek. But the fight before that, the pay-per-view opener Jesus Ramos vs Shane Mosley Jr. was quite an entertaining fight. Ramos is clearly the better boxer and he did show levels, but Mosley did show heart and showed a good chin to put on a fun-losing effort and keep coming at Ramos with big punches after taking big shots himself. Jesus Ramos is now the WBC interim middleweight champion with that win over Mosley Jr. I'm telling you guys, man, 3 WBC interim title fights on one card, 2 of which were vacant interim title fights. It's a PBC thing for sure, just like how Top Rank have their thing with the WBO. The prelims were pretty lit as well, ended off with Frank Martin getting a big KO in his first fight back since his devastating loss to Tank back in June of 2024. It will be interesting to see what Frank Martin can do at 140 now. But yeah, all round it was a decent card outside of the Lara fight. The Foster vs Fulton fight wasn't really entertaining, it was very one-sided, but when someone puts on a clinic against another high-level guy in a fight that's pretty much even on the betting odds, you've got to respect it. And of course there was the main event, which some people may say was very controversial, and some people may say was not controversial at all. And some people may call it entertaining, and there's a section of boxing fans that are calling this fight boring. Me personally, I'd say the fight was entertaining and it wasn't that controversial, but draws in boxing are inherently controversial, and I do think that there's just more of a case for a Roach win than there is a Pitbull win if anything. But hey, I'm just a casual at the end of the day. So you guys are going to have to let me know in the comments how the fight really ought to have been scored round for round. And despite the fact that there was a lot of clinching in the fight was fun to watch because there were good exchanges and the fight had different swings and momentum, and the Texas crowd was lit in there, and they were lively when those roughhouse moments in the clinch were happening, making that more fun to watch. Before I go, can I just say, wow, Peter Yan's win over Merab was definitely an all-time great win. Superb performance against such a dominant champion who holds such a dominant win over him. I did manage to catch the UFC on a replay without finding out any of the results before watching it back, which is nice. I obviously didn't watch the UFC at the time because the boxing was on. Pantoja losing the title like that early in the fight is so unfortunate, but fair play to Joshua Vannon becoming champ. A fluke winning the title fight, but he definitely earned that title shot, so he did put himself in the position for that to be able to happen. The Brandon Moreno fight ended in an early stoppage, not gonna lie, and the Talbot vs Cejudo fight was a fun one. Talbot did look good, and Cejudo showed heart to take that beating and keep fighting in what was his retirement fight. Henry Cejudo is a legend of the game, and I'm glad he went the distance in his final fight. He got a nice little send-off after, much deserved for Triple C. Anyway, you guys let me know how you scored Lamont Roach versus Pitbull Cruz in the comments, and let me know whether or not you thought the fight was entertaining. Please like and hype the video, and you have been listening to O.M.E Boxing.